Hi and welcome to today's video and welcome to my channel. My name is Rita. So you might have seen my video a few days ago where I talked about my top palettes of 2022, and I did my video in the format of ranking palettes based on how many times I had used them during the year. And I was pretty happy with that list. Those top 20 palettes, lots of them I really love. But there were some of my favourite palettes that weren't on that list. And I particularly feel guilty if I'm raving about how much I absolutely adore something. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I think people should go buy it if they see it. Which I really only think people should go buy drugstore palettes. That's all I say, because I have no idea what people's financial situation is. Also, a very expensive product is only worth it if you're going to use it a lot. If you're going to use it a lot, I think it's worth it. And I have expensive products here I'm going to talk about. But if you're not going to use it a lot, even if you really like it, it's not worth it, in my opinion. So I have decided I want to guess and aim at what my top 20 palettes of 2023 will be, and set myself a goal to use my favorite palettes enough to get them onto that list. So my top 20 of 2022 ranged from palettes I had used 6 times, which seems like very little, but unless you wear makeup every day of the week, 6 times, that's still most days of the week, is about a week of use. So it's not nothing. But it went up to 53 uses, and actually the total from my top 20 was 223 uses. And I have set somewhat arbitrary goals for what I hope to be my top 20 of 2023, and that also adds up to 223 uses, which is about half of the number of times in an entire year that I use different eyeshadow palettes. I count a use as using any individual shade. So if one day I mix and match and use 5 shades from 5 different palettes, then all 5 of those palettes are listed. The way that I track my usage is in my normal diary, which is like an A5 paper, like a little notebook. Do I have any? I have my diaries going back through the years, and I know my current diary isn't up in this room right now, but I was wondering if perhaps one of my old diaries would be nearby and I could show you. But anyway, so I track my whole life in that diary, appointments, things I have to do, work things, and I track my eyeshadow palette usage and singles, though it is much harder to remember the singles in there too. And the reason, like so many people have said, just keep a notebook where you do your makeup and it's fine. I do my makeup in a rush all the time. I am very bad at being on time for things, and I can't be sitting around to write it in at the time. So generally I have no problem remembering, particularly until I go to work, and then I have my diary open and I write it in, and generally it's no problem. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I've forgotten to do it for a few days, and then I'll remember, oh yeah, I wore my green dress on Monday, so I wore this particular palette with a green I love in it, and I can remember what I'm wearing today on Wednesday, but then Tuesday I'm not sure, and then I'll look and I'm like, oh, I posted on Instagram stories what I wore. So social media definitely helps with the tracking, but generally I'm quite good, and I have tracked what eyeshadow palette I've used every single day since the 1st of January 2021. And are there days I've forgotten and made mistakes? I'm sure, but generally I'm quite good at doing it. So this method happens to work for me. I know lots of people update a spreadsheet every day. I cannot do that. I can't do it. And even my spreadsheet where I have put in all my use from last year and the year before, I have to do it by month because I just get lost. And then I end up double counting or not counting something. So yeah, so all of that boring stuff aside, this video will also be my introduction for my 2023 Pan That palette, which is the Fantastic Ladies collab. The theme this year is old school. I need to look up the exact wording of the theme. And the idea was to use your oldest palette I think my oldest palette is a little Wet n Wild, Walking on Eggshells. I don't really want to use that all year. And then I have some other oldies like the Elizabeth Arden palette that I hit pan on earlier this year. And the Urban Decay Naked 3. Urban Decay Naked 3 is completely unusable. Sorry, I'm looking for the title of the project. And the Elizabeth Arden palette is getting very old. So yeah, the title for this year's Fantastic Ladies theme is Kicking It Old School, and there are expert panners in the Fantastic Ladies group, and they will be panning entire large palettes. I've gone for an easier route myself because I am still new to panning, in my opinion, and also the whole point of this project is I want to rotate through all the things I love and not just hyper focus on one thing and use it up completely. However, the palette that I have picked for this year, I do want to use up completely because I absolutely adore it. And whether or not I use it up completely this year, I want to use it up completely within the next couple of years, because if it goes bad before I finish it, I will be devastated, absolutely devastated, because it is discontinued. So yeah, I will leave a timestamp down below if you are only interested in my intro for my Pan That palette. But I am going to start out at my lowest. I'm going to go in order of how many times I'm setting a goal to use each palette. Here they all are, all 20 of them. You can see we've got a range of sizes. We've got bigger palettes and very small ones, and I essentially have these lower goals, because there were palettes I'd only used six times in my top 20 for 2022, but also because I love easy makeup when I'm rushing out the door, just feeling nicer, and I still find it creative and fun to do a very simple look. So I don't want to feel bad and like I'm not hitting goals on a project because I went for one of my easy small palettes. So I have 3 palettes that I'm aiming to use 6 times in 2023. The first is a lovely little mini palette. This is from Catrice. It's Caviar Gauche. Trying to do the whole room. There we go. So I think it's obviously inspired, not an exact dupe by any means, the colours don't match, but I think it's obviously inspired by the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk quad, and that is the vibe you get, and it's just beautiful and easy. It's like soft, warm, really easy breezy neutrals, and definitely this palette wouldn't go deep enough for a lot of people, but for me it does, because I've no interest in very deep. So the next one is slightly bigger, and this is the Sigil inspired by Tammy Tanuka, Lovely Voice of a Humble Bird. Beautiful teeny tiny palette. So these are really cool toned, and obviously these are teeny tiny pans, so even 6 uses I think I might see some dips, but I can't really get this to focus properly. There we go. This palette is beautiful. When I first got it, I immediately used it a whole bunch of times, and then I had it in a project in 2022 where I used every shade once. But yeah, I want to get a bit more use out of it. And it was expensive because, you know, paying for it to come from abroad, etc. Even though it's so small, I want every brand to do teeny tiny palettes like this, and like Sigil does, for them to be genuinely cheaper than the full size, because you were able to get a bigger, like with proper size pans version of this palette, but I was thrilled to get this teeny tiny one. And then next is a palette that has a very special place in my heart, and this is the BH Cosmetics Love in London. And the reason that this is so special to me is this is the palette I wore on the 1st of January 2021, the first day I ever started tracking my eyeshadow use. So I absolutely love these cool tones, and I am really looking forward to using this a few times this year. I am going to also set myself the goal of using every shade. I am going to track every shade I use until I've used them all once. So I'm going to track and put draw the shape of the palettes and put a little X when I use a shade. I'm not going to then keep tracking if I use it again and again and again, but I am going to make sure that I use every shade in all of these palettes at least once. So for example, the blue in the Love in London will be a little bit of a challenge for me, but that's okay. So next is a palette I want to use 7 times this year, and this is my favorite Natasha Denona palette. It is the Mini Retro. Absolutely stunning. I highly recommend this palette. I think it's worth the full price. If you see it on sale, I would buy it. I adore it. It was the first Natasha Denona palette I got, and I've gotten many more since. This is still my favorite. So 7 times on that, and that's exactly what I'm thinking of. I don't want to feel guilty about using a mini palette just because there's more eyeshadow in my bigger palettes sitting unused on the day that I use this. I adore this. I should definitely use it 7 times, and that shouldn't be a problem. So this project is just giving me permission to use the things I love. Next up, I've got a whole bunch that I want to use 8 times this year. The first is this Catrice X Jenny palette. I absolutely adore this palette, but I didn't use it enough last year, so I want to use it 8 times this year, maybe even more than that. The shade Offshore is just so special and so nice. Next is another 6 pan, Juvia's Place X Vanessa, 2 collab palettes in a row. I really like this palette. I love the shimmers. I would generally prefer for there to be at least as many shimmers as there are mattes in a palette, but I think this works really well, and this shade Busy is such a nice transition for me. So yeah, I really like this. This obviously is a much more pigmented formula than I generally go for, and it's more intense colours that I would generally use, but I find that the formula is great and they sheer out in the way that I want, and I'm very happy with it. So but you can absolutely pack them on and get very intense looks, which is cool. Not necessarily my thing though. Next up, we've got another Essence palette. So, or were the others all Catrice? Maybe this, yeah, the first Essence palette. So this is the Coffee to Glow. I was very happy to see that Taylor Rynn mentioned she really likes this palette. I think it's amazing. So we've got 7 real eyeshadows in here, and then this ridiculous like gooey thing, obviously inspired by Huda Beauty. So I'm not going to use the goo, but the other 7 shades I want to use, and I want to use this palette 8 times. It's a fun, beautiful palette, really easy to use. So the next is a bit different. So this is the Samantha March Life's Draft palette. However, these are magnetic pans, so I've changed mine. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shades that are from the original palette, and then this is 13, a shade from Sigil, and then this guy, and this guy are singles from Glam Shop Poland. I might have to put the names on the screen because I'm not going to pop them out now to see. So I'm very excited to have some of my singles mixed into this project. Just Samantha is into a more soft and subtle shimmer. I'm into a more intense shimmer. So I love that this palette is customizable. And then also having the face shades, I love that. It's just easy to be able to open one palette and do a lot of your makeup at once. I find that very, very helpful. So I'm excited to have some of my fun singles in there as well. So that's another one with 8 uses as the goal. Similarly, the Colourpop Wild Nothing. This is my favourite Colourpop palette. The only thing I don't like is I wish that this matte here was just a pure matte and didn't have shimmers in it. Also, I think that these Super Shocks are heading out, so I'm going to use them, and then if they're unusable I will pop them out because these are magnetic as well. I'll pop them out and I'll put in a different shade. Like I'm thinking maybe Silk Teddy from Bare Necessities could be nice. Anyway, so this one I want to use 8 times. Next is the other BH Cosmetics palette, which is the Smitten in Switzerland. So this is a bit more colour. Obviously it's been neutral, 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 bit of pink, bit of purple. This is a bit more colour. So this is to give me something fun during the year. And I actually think it's a great travel palette because I love pinks. So I have those. I love neutrals. Now these are very neutral neutrals or cool neutrals. There isn't a super warm neutral in here. And I love yellows. And then I'm happy to experiment with the green, and then the blue and the black less so, but I think this is a great travel palette, you know, if you want to just bring one thing and have quite a few options. So I might travel with that during the year. We'll have to see. I have one trip planned, but no, I have accommodation booked, but no transport booked. It'll come together. Next up is the LA Girl Pro Mastery palette. So we've had a few pinks so far, but this is getting more serious on the pinks now. I absolutely love this palette. I love the color story. I love the formula. These shimmers are so intense. It's funny because I think I have a similar, you know, preference to Laura May Beauty, because she loves shimmers and light shimmers as well, but she doesn't like the formula in these palettes. I do think you kind of have to work with them a bit, and they take a bit of work, but I think it's worth it because the shine once you get there is so pretty. So yeah, I'm really happy to be able to use this one this year. So next I have one palette that I have a goal to use 9 times, and that is the Essence Bambi palette. So I got these this year. I think this is probably might be the best palette of the year. I think it's beautiful. I got these this year, and I put the Catrice Marie or Miss Bunny palette in a project, so I used it more than I used this, but I actually prefer this color story. So I am looking forward to getting to know this palette a bit more, because I think I was only able to use it 4 times this year. Oh, the lighting's changing. Oh, it seems all right. So double the use next year, even though it's still a pretty low goal, or over double the use, 9 uses. Next up is a very basic, boring palette. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a palette in Stoned Rose Beauty. I have great use on it. I have good dips here. Because this was in a project in 2021. It was in my Pan That Imprint project. So I got great use out of it. I used the palette like 50 times. I was going for these 2 face shades and the 3 eye shades. I wasn't doing the blushes, so you can still see a bit of the imprint there. I have barely used it in 2022, and that makes no sense. Now, I did not pay full price for this palette. I got it on an amazing discount. Come in focus, come in focus. There we go. I got it on an amazing discount, so it's not like it's a huge amount of wasted money, but still, I absolutely love it, and I would consider buying another color story of this, because she does this concept in different color stories from time to time in the future, particularly if it had a face powder in it, because then that would truly be the perfect travel palette. But so it's unacceptable for me to want to buy another one and not use the one I have. So I want to be able to say on a quick day when I'm really busy that I do boring, simple neutrals, all one palette, and I don't feel guilty about that. So 10 uses on that. Another one with 10 uses, a totally different vibe, though also a luxury palette, is the Bobbi Brown Pink Glow Luxe eyeshadow palette. And it's these phenomenal toppers. They are so beautiful and so fun. And so generally I'm going to use this palette in conjunction with others. And they're such great toppers. I did use them in 2022, but I'd like to use them more. And sometimes I kind of feel like I'm not letting the other shimmers, like more standard shimmers from another palette, shine if I top them with this, but that's ridiculous. And also I can just top like the very inner lid if I want, and still have the rest of that shimmer shine through on the rest of the lid. Also, my eyeshadows don't have feelings, so I should just do what I enjoy. That one I did pay full price for, so I am very keen on my cost per use not being like €5. I want it to be much smaller than that, so I need to keep going on that guy. Next is another luxury palette. It was bought for me as a gift by my partner's mother, and this is the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette. So we've got eye and cheek shades in here as well. I like the cheek shades. I wouldn't have bought, you know, a luxury highlighter like this on its own ever. Highlighter's not my thing, but the blush is lovely. I have thoughts about cream blush. I'm going to have another video. We'll get to it. But I really like this blush. These eyeshadows are so beautiful. Now, I only got this at the end of the year, so I don't feel bad about the fact that I didn't use it that many times in 2022, but I definitely want to use it a bit more in 2023. So what did I say? 10 uses is my goal for that. The next palette I don't have. It is on the way to me. I ordered it yesterday. It is the NABLA Read My Mind palette, which was released in 2022. And the minute I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. It is currently, the sale might be over by the time I upload this video, but it at the minute is on sale on Cosmetic for Less, which is a German shop with, and it's on a very good discount. It's like $27.99 or something like that, and on Beauty Bay I think it's like, I think it's reduced on Beauty Bay, so it might be something like $39 on Beauty Bay right now, but normally on Beauty Bay I think it's like $46 or $48. So I'm very happy to get that on such a good deal. I had a gift card. I ordered a lot of stuff. But so that is a new palette that is on this list to use 10 times. And another NABLA palette that I already have is the Side by Side. And I absolutely adore this. I did this No Pan Left Behind in a project this year, and it's just so fun. So I'm really looking forward to, again, using every shade, because I would go for Magic Moment and Body and Soul as kind of my anchor shades, and I would do that over and over again. But using every shade, I realise I love this whole palette, even the deep greys. I think they're gorgeous. So looking forward to using that guy 10 times. Next is another Natasha Denona. So I think that's the brand we have the most of. We have 3 Natasha Denona palettes. And this is one of the middies. It has mascara stuck to the front of it that I'm trying to scrape off. This is the Glam palette. This palette is so beautiful. And I love cool tones. This is my favourite shade. Love it so much. So my goal is to use this guy 12 times during the year and get to know it a bit better, because I go for center eyelid and inner corner, this guy and this guy most of the time. So I want to play around with some of the other shades. I must say, I love this goldy shade, like, because it is like a cooler gold. I think it's really nice, really nice. And then we have a big jump up to my next palette, which I also don't have yet. I have ordered, I'm so excited, the GLAMINATRIX Nearly Natural palette from Australia. It is due to ship in February, so it could be March, it could be April by the time I get it. I've no idea. Though I had something, not makeup, something else arrive from Australia within a couple of weeks a while ago. So we shall see. And my goal for that, obviously it's a brand new palette to me, brand new formula to me, is to use it 21 times, which is a high enough goal, but I am so excited about it. And, you know, if I absolutely fall in love with it, maybe that'll be really easy to do. And even if it's not, I do want to force myself to use it, because I really want to get to know it. I don't want to have a palette, you know, use it 7 times, think, oh, it's real beautiful, whatever, and then just let it sit there. I want to get to know it properly, because, you know, if my first impressions are good, I'd be tempted to order another thing from GLAMINATRIX. It's very far away. I need to make sure I love it before I ever order anything else again. There are two what look like very deep shades to me that I don't think I will use in that palette. So I have also ordered two NABLA, I have ordered NABLA singles, but that's not connected. I have ordered two GLAMINATRIX singles because their palettes are magnetic. So if those, I will use the two dark shades and see how I like them. And if they prove to be not that useful to me, then I will pop those out and put in the two singles I got. So that should be fun. And then, so starting out the year as I mean to go on, the palette I'm wearing on my eyes today and my palette for the Fantastic Ladies Kicking It Old School Pan That palette for 2023 is the Zoeva Soft Sun Voyager palette. So this is a travel palette. It released in 2019, July 2019. I bought it in like August 2020 in TK Maxx, so it was already old when I got it. Obviously not the oldest palette in the world. There'd be people panning like 15-year-old palettes in this project, no problem, and that's great, but I don't have that many of those, and I don't have enough. I didn't have something I wanted to do that with. If I have to throw this away with eyeshadow still in it, I will cry. I absolutely want, oh, it doesn't have a mirror, I can do it this way. I absolutely want to use up this palette in its lifetime while it's still good. Every shade is so nice. Today, I will show you, I filmed this look. I don't know if that footage will be okay, so I will explain. I have Romance is the only shimmer I'm wearing. And you can see, like, it has this lovely kind of goldy, I wouldn't say flip, but like the sheen has got, it's so nice. And depending on what you pair it with, it can either come off more or less pink. I do have it over, I can't read backwards, Parasol today. So Parasol is under it, so it comes off slightly more pink. Then I have Barefoot in the crease, and then I have a bit of Horizon on the outer corner, very small bit, and I have nothing on the lower lash line, and I have a bit of Parasol on the inner corner, and I absolutely love it. I have never been disappointed with the look I've done out of this palette. You can get a decent variety of looks out of this palette because you can do an all pink look, you can do an all red look, you can do an all bronzy look, you can mix them all together. You've seen me many times do pink on the inner corner, red on the outer corner. That's like my favorite look ever. Yeah, so I have set myself a goal to use this 50 times, so that's about once a week for the year. I also want to hit pans. If I could finish this entire palette in a year, I'd be extremely impressed. I'm not certain that that is realistic, but I want to hit pan on Romance and Barefoot. That's my first goal. So people will be doing monthly updates for this project. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I sort of fell off the wagon with my updates on Project Pans this year. I found it very difficult. Part of what I hope will make this project easier this year than my palette usage numbers last year as well is also that I don't plan to get sick this year. Presumably I will at some stage, but last year I got COVID, I got appendicitis and had surgery. I had in December a vomiting bug and then a respiratory bug, and I needed antibiotics. I had another non-COVID, I didn't get antibiotics that time, but like sore throaty thing another time in the year. It was just constant. I kept getting sick and I kept getting sick, and then I'd have nothing to post in a Project Pan update, and yeah, it was very disappointing. So hopefully this year I will be well, particularly at the start of the year. I am getting married at the end of February, and I want to be well and enjoy that, and I want everybody else to be well, so we'll see. But I was thinking that perhaps I shouldn't do any project panning at all until after the wedding, other than maybe skincare stuff. But I've realised, A, I just enjoy makeup and I like using it, but also B, I'm better at doing my skincare if I have to remove makeup. It's really easy for me to say, well, I don't have a particular reason to remove anything from my face, so I'll just go to bed and not do any nighttime skincare if I wasn't wearing makeup. So I think it's actually better for my skin if I do keep wearing makeup up until the wedding. Maybe like the week of and stuff like that. I might not. We'll see. But yeah, so I amn't going to join any other project pans this year because I want to focus on this. I want to focus on all of these beautiful palettes, and I also don't want to particularly give myself extra incentive to wear base makeup, because obviously like that can clog your pores and stuff like that, and particularly not to use anything older before the wedding. So none of these eyeshadow palettes are so old that I'm worried about them affecting my skin. But yeah, so I am not going to join other projects right now. Maybe later in the year. Like, I love Partners in Cream. I think it's the best project ever. I love it so much. I may well join that later in the year, but I am not going to yet, because I specifically in that project, I love using up an older foundation and things like that. I'm not doing that until after the wedding. That's just not happening. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I know this is weird, like this isn't a real project. I'm just making it up. It's like, it's not a project other people do, and it's very arbitrary and strange. A goal to use something 6 times in an entire year is not much at all, but a goal to use something 50 times is a decent amount. And I found that very helpful with my Pan That palette for this year, which was the Beauty Bakery Breakfast in Bed palette. Absolutely adore that. Those pans were enormous. I think they're 2.6 grams each. So if my only goal had been to hit pan or finish shades, I would have been so sad. But my goal was to use the palette 50 times, and I used it 53 times in the year, and I hit a significant pan. Like, you can see how deep it is, and I'm well on the way to hitting another pan. So that palette is not in my top 20 list for this year because I have used it so much in the last year. I don't want to get sick of it. I'm not sick of it. I absolutely love it. But I want to give myself more space to use other things that were unable to be used last year because I was so focused on that palette. I do also have a list of another 40 palettes. So it goes from some Catrice mini palettes, Essence mini palettes, NABLA mini palettes, Natasha Denona mini palettes, my Rowan quads, Wet n Wild mini palettes, Zoeva mini palette, another one, a few Colourpops, Glam Shop, Juvia's Place, NABLA, Viseart, Zoeva. Sorry, this is in again the order of how many times I want to use them. The Beauty Bakery is in there. A new palette I just ordered from JCat, because I really want to try their shimmer formula. My Sydney Grace Build Your Own palette, which initially this was going to be in my top 20 aim to use, because like I made this palette. I obviously love the colour story. Rosy, very soft neutrals, my thing, my jam. But it was kicked out of the top 20 when I bought the NABLA Read My Mind palette, because I really want to get to know that palette, and people say the shimmers in the top 2 rows are incredible, so I'm excited. Another LA Girl 16 pan is in there. Some of my bigger 10 pan Zoeva palettes are in there, and those, my goals range from 1 use, which I know is pathetic, but I don't want to get to the end of 2023 and not have used my favorite palettes, so I want to use them once, to 4 uses. So none of that would put any of them in my top 20 for next year. So that adds up to 89 uses. My top 20 adds up to 223 uses, so there's still plenty of room in there for if I fall in love with something throughout the year to get use out of that. I am not doing this to stop myself from using other things, but I am doing this so I don't forget that the makeup I love, the makeup I spent money on, that I went out of my way to, you know, find on a website or go into a special shop to buy or whatever, deserves my attention and I deserve to use the things I enjoy. Now, it did occur to me, this is a list of 60 palettes I want to use this year. Should I be decluttering the palettes that aren't on this list? And I will consider that. Maybe halfway through the year I'll check in and think about that. But I'm not doing it now, because it's not that I hate all of those other palettes. It's just they're not my favourites. So we'll see how I go and how my thoughts progress on all of that. I won't be updating on this specific project monthly. Even on the Pan palette, I'm not planning to update monthly. I'm thinking maybe every 2 months. Because, for example, last year with my Pan palette, I took a break for a month in November because I did Natasha November, where I just focused on Natasha Denona palettes, and that was so fun. I really loved doing that. So I want to have the space. You know, I've got loads of Colourpop palettes between the top 20 and the bottom 40 lists. Maybe I'll pick a month and I'll focus on Colourpop, and my Zoeva palette is not Colourpop. So I don't want to, you know, feel guilty about doing an update where I'm like, nothing happened, I didn't touch it once. So I'm not going to update monthly on that, maybe every 2 months. And I think maybe for this entire top 20 project, I will update maybe halfway through the year, or possibly quarterly, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you so much for watching. This is quite a long video. I probably won't have time to stick in swatch photos for all of these palettes, but I definitely have photos of every single one of these that I already own on Instagram, other than the Samantha March palette, because I have swapped out the singles that are in that. So I might swatch that and have put a photo in this video already. And generally Instagram is where I'm a bit better at putting up swatch photos and things like that. I obviously will swatch the NABLA Read My Mind when it arrives, and the GLAMINATRIX Nearly Natural when it arrives. I'm so excited to do those swatch photos because those palettes look so beautiful. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Also, we're now into the every day's getting a little bit longer. There's more natural light, like this bit here trying to ruin my colour balance part of the year. So it's just so much easier for me doing shift work to find time with natural light to take swatch photos now. So looking forward to playing with all of these palettes throughout the year. Thank you so much for watching, and Happy New Year. Bye. So starting as I mean to go on, I am going to do a look with the Zoeva Soft Sun palette. First off, I have to get my fringe out of my face. And actually the like blush, bronzer and highlighter I'm wearing today are also from Zoeva, from the Together We Shine face palette, which I really love. So I've already primed my eyes. So I'm going to use this Beauty Bakery brush, which unfortunately I just broke last night, or yesterday I was or 2 days ago I was washing it, and the beautiful little whisk broke off the end, but it is what it is. I love this. It's like a fluffy blending brush, but it's kind of angled on one side. It's such a nice brush. Really nice. So first I'm going to go into Barefoot and just throw that in my crease because I am boring. I am going to work, so I don't have too long to do this, but I love that this palette is very easy for me to work with. I have never had a problem with it. And now I'm going to add a bit of Parasol, the matte pink, on the inner lid. The lighting today is kind of very warm and altering things a little, but diffused natural light is better than the alternative. So And also, actually, my house, like, this is a rented house. We don't have curtains, so I can't be in the dark during the day. It's not possible, except for in the living room, which is very annoying. So we've got a bit of pink there, and I'm going to add a bit of Horizon, the deepest matte, on the outside. Not too much. And I'm going to use my tin from, oh yeah, I got this one online, or maybe Amazon or something, some random website, to just clean my brush. And then just a bit more of a blend up into the crease. And now the fun part, the shimmers. So my first goal is to hit pan in Romance and Barefoot. So I want to use a good bit of Romance. It's also my favorite shade. And it's this pink, but if you don't use the pink matte underneath, it can look much more neutral. And it really is just such a special shade. I love it. It's like a gold sheen to it. And then I think actually that's the only shimmer I'm going to use today. I was thinking I might have done all of the shimmers and done a bit of a gradient, but I really like how this looks. So I'm just going to blend. Grand. I'm not going to do anything on the lower lash line. I often do that where I leave my lower lash line alone, including I'm not going to put mascara on my lower lash line. So that's just a preference. Speaking of mascara, where on earth is it? Oh, there's one. Just a moment. One on the floor. So this is the last hurrah of the superhero It Cosmetics Superhero Mascara, which is definitely on the way out. I definitely need to mirror for this. Nothing too dramatic. Yeah, it's clumping like crazy. So I think this is literally its last hurrah, and I'm going to get rid of it now. Into the bin it goes. But not a bad last go. I will get rid of that clump there in a minute when it dries. And also once my mascara is dry, I'll do a little inner corner with probably Parasol again. Or I could reach into a highlighter. Actually, the highlighter from the Soft Sun palette would work well because it is kind of this warm, it's very nice. Warm kind of pinky kind of thing. It's interesting. Yeah, so I also have nothing in my brows. I amn't going to bother putting anything in my brows because my fringe is covering them today. So I'm just not going to bother. So, Shanae.